can win her around.
Thanks. We're going to talk about different networks and different strategies, and how we come up with different strategies for networks at Dell. One of the core things that we think about first is what social means and how social plays a role in everyday life. The fact that all social activity share the same roots. Human beings are social beings. They have been social since dawn. And the things that motivate social energy and activity doesn't change. This is a really important concept in Dell. So when we think about social, we think first and foremost about what the core motivation is for people to be social, and recognize that those motivations are the same whether they're online or offline. And we think about business. How does business change through time? Well, there are certain elements in business that never change. The smart fundamentals in business are another constant. If you know how to run a business in the 1800s, you're going to know how to run a business on the fundamentals of a business in the 1900s and in the 2000s. The smart fundamentals never change. You know how to measure, you know how to engage, you know how to sell. So we take those two fundamental things and use that as a basis for a core social media strategy. We take the fundamentals of social, we take the fundamentals of business, we use that as the fundamental core social media strategy that goes across all platforms and all networks. This is really important because it allows us to be flexible. So let's talk about the elements that don't change. Listen, engage, and act. That is our core fundamental philosophy at Dell. And listen is the first word up there. You've heard a few people today talk about listening in their role and in their own strategy. For Dell, listening is the cornerstone. There are 25,000 posts a day mentioning Dell or Dell products in English alone. 25,000 posts. That's not counting the brand agnostic conversations that we're also interested in listening to. And we have, a year ago, launched the Listening Command Center, Social Media Listening Command Center, which monitors, analyzes, and creates dashboards out of those conversations to get back into business, and is integrated in business strategy. We've also got 70 people around the globe engaging in those conversations in 11 different languages. That's a core social media strategy. It does not matter what platform those conversations are taking place in. Our core strategy is we listen, we engage in what we listen, what we hear, and we act on those conversations. Fundamental doesn't change no matter the platform. Another thing about that is ongoing relationships. Social is all about creating relationships. Again, a platform agnostic belief. Be transparent, add value. The idea of people who think that they can get away with something in social, I think that they don't realize the risk that they're taking. You lose your trust, if a brand loses their credibility in social, getting it back is an incredibly difficult journey. So that transparency, the value, the idea that these platforms actually integrate and need to be seen as a holistic community, cross-platform. I mean, granted, Facebook is the 800-pound gorilla, but the amount of people that we know in our analytics, or the people who follow us on Facebook, that also engage with us on other social media platforms is significant. If we only focused on one of those platforms and thought that they were only conversations that happen on a single platform, we would be missing a huge opportunity. So, core social media strategy ensures that you're ready for any new platform. I'm sure all of you know about Google Plus, and they keep talking about the brand pages that are coming up any day now. You might have seen that SideWiki. Who knows about Google SideWiki? SideWiki. One person. So this was one too. Okay. So they launched SideWiki, which was their attempt at owning conversations on brand sites which basically was the ability to leave messages on the site with actually quite a bit of fanfare a year and a half ago. They pulled it down today. So platforms are going to come, platforms are going to go. If you have a core social media strategy, you're already ahead of the game when a new platform comes out. Because you already know what the guidelines are, you know what the governance is, you know what the process is, you know what the engagement model is. It's already done. It allows you to move much more quickly. So while the roots are common when we talk about different platforms, the branches change. What causes branches to change? Well, there are three elements that we see. The audience. Different platforms attract different audiences, and brands attract different audiences. So strategy changes based upon who the audience is. The functionality offered by the platform changes. Facebook has geo-targeting. Twitter doesn't. You can't have the same messages going out on each one of those because you've got different markets, you've got different visibility on it. And then business objectives. Different platforms support different business objectives. Your business objectives won't change, but you'll adapt those business objectives based upon the platform, the audience, and the functionality of the platform. So let's talk about why you want to listen and why you want to know who your audience is. Well, first thing, you want to know who they are. By who they are, it's not only the individuals talking, but by knowing who they are on a broader level, you'll understand whether your marketing message is actually mapped to the individuals. A lot of people have seen like buttons on pages and product pages. You can do a reverse lookup of the demographics of those like buttons and find out whether or not the people liking those products are actually the people you're marketing to. If you don't know your audience, you may be missing that connection and actually marketing to people who aren't even buying your product. So know your audience. The other thing about knowing your audience is you'll identify the people who are advocates, who are influencers, who are ranters, so you know whether or not to engage with them or not. And you'll be able to massage your message to make sure that your message is hitting the right audience. So knowing who they are is very important. So where they are, what platform are they actually on? So mapping your audience across the platforms will understand where the conversations are occurring about your brand, which of the platforms then need to become a priority for you, and then what they're saying. What are they saying on that platform? Conversations for Dell vary from platform to platform, and we adjust our strategy based upon the type of conversation, the audience, and what they're saying. Each one of those plays into the development of the strategy. Just for instance here, if you're talking about where do you want to go, if you're a baby brand, Facebook has the most amount of influence on baby brands. YouTube on music, more so than MySpace. YouTube, I had a cousin visit. He was listening to my iTunes, playing some music. I told him about a band. I said, you should listen to it. Instead of looking in my iTunes library, he goes to YouTube and types their name in. I've got all of their music in my own library, but his first thought is to go to YouTube to find new music. And then reviews for electronic bands. Reviews are incredibly important for electronic brands. So depending upon the brand, you're going to be able to map this to different platforms. Functionality is the second thing that we look at. Every platform gives you different functionality, and they have different strengths and different challenges. When we look at social networks in general, across the globe, we look at what is the strength of that particular social network and what are the challenges there. And we compare it to the microblogs, which we compare to video blogs. Each one of these things have different strengths and different platforms. We look at every single one, and when we look at them, we look at them first as an aggregate. And then we look into the individual platforms and determine whether our audience is there. So the professional platforms also play a very strong role, as does photo sharing. Every single one of those aggregate areas gives us a different insight into the type of strategy that we want to do. We look at the strengths, we look at the challenges, and we create strategy out of it. We come up with something like this, based upon business objectives. We do a mapping of every one of the platforms where we know our audience is at today. We determine whether we want to do a social search campaign, whether we want to do social engagement, whether we want to do social commerce, and we map the positives and negatives, the pros and cons across each one of those networks to determine where are we going to be operating. Another thing we do with cross-network strategies is we will take something similar to this. We'll take all of the potential places for Dell to engage in, and then we'll take all of the resources that we have, all of the people that we have, and we map them against those platforms to determine where they should be engaging. Salespeople need to engage in different areas in PR, which is different than product group, which is different than subject matter experts, which is different than PR. So what we do with our business units is we sit down with them and we give them a layout of all of the platforms that they have the opportunity to engage in, and we map their resources against it before we go into deep dive of exactly how we're going to drive the engagement and how we're going to drive the core social media strategy in order to push business objectives and align with them. All of these things are done in a way where it's gone through a governance process that ensures that our engagement in social media is aligning with the fundamental social media strategies. One of the things that we do at Dell is we do social media training for the company. We've conducted over 15,000 social media sessions on nearly 20 different training modules on social media. We have almost 3,000 people who are actually certified at Dell that understands what our social media strategy is, which means that they can go out and engage on behalf of Dell without moderation. Fundamental to our social media strategy is to empower the employees to be able to engage once they know what it is that Dell's core social media strategy is. We walk them through initiatives like this when they have broader conversations in mind, when they have broader views into what's happening in social, and then we just give them the keys. We do have a governance model, and we do have moderation across the majority of our platforms that make sure that we have the ability to see very quickly because we're always listening. We know very quickly when any of our employees are going off the reservation, so to speak, which is one of the reasons why we're confident that between training and listening, that we will be able to find people who are doing the best work in social media and the people who are running a little bit askew. So how does that end up?